Welcome to the show. I'm Ari Murray and I live in Florida. I'm an Aries. It's my son's birthday this week. That's what's new with me. I'm here with my friend Brandon, and we're gonna spend the time together today prepping for Black Friday. And I'm sorry to do that to us in July, but better now than then. And we've got so much to talk about. I also have a fancy slide deck, which is not usually my style. What I usually say, which I shouldn't say anymore, but I used to say, is that you can be good at marketing or you can be good at decks, but you can't be good at both. But I am trying to learn. So we have a lot to do, but to make sure we're anchored into the topic of the day, want to make sure we all write into the chat and share out to everyone and say how prepared we feel for Q4. Or it could be how prepared were you last year? So Brandon, how are you feeling for Q4?
I'm feeling good about Q4, but you're asking me to open some wounds early in the year here, so I'm willing to do it to help bring
Yeah,
some perspective to our audience. But this is getting me into that state earlier than I usually like to. But nevertheless, always excited for the next Q4 and to take on the next challenge.
I like that. I think I'm at a five because I've like ordered the inventory that I need and I feel really good about
Nice.
that. But I keep getting asked what my Black Friday dates are. Like, of course there's cyber, but then when am I actually going to start doing some things? And I don't feel like committing yet because I want to see where my forecast lands, which is a really bad way to be. So I feel like I'm at a five and I need to lock in my calendar by next week. So lots to do. If anyone wants to write in the chat with how they're feeling, that would be great. And we will hit the road. But Brandon, would love for you to introduce yourself. You're the CEO of Shipfusion, which is a massive, massive 3PL that some of my former clients use, and they do huge order volumes that like I still can't really wrap my head around. So congrats on all you've built and teach us who you are.
Absolutely. So Brandon Luft, CEO of Shipfusion. Just on the personal side, I'm a dad with three little kids, 10, 8, and 4. Two of them were at sleepover camp for a couple weeks this summer. So I feel like I finally got a break for the first time in 10 years. So it was nice to enjoy that. But now everybody's back and we're talking about Q4. So it feels like the party's over.
Yeah.
But a little bit about Ship Fusion. I co-founded it 12 years ago with my co-founder, Michael, who's a software engineer. And we really had this vision to bring a really modern approach, a very tech forward approach to the growing world of e-commerce logistics. And that's what we set out to do in 2014. It's been a crazy ride the last 12 years. Too many Q4s to count,
Mhm.
but a really fun journey, fun adventure. And that's taken us to nice net warehouse network. Currently, we're in Las Vegas, Chicago, Pennsylvania, and Toronto, and we are going to be announcing more publicly, but I'll say it today that we are opening in Texas in Q1. So growing warehouse network, but a lot of the heart and soul of the company is in the software we built, which gives our clients a lot of great tools to view their orders in real time, create custom shipping rules, see their billing, everything with a lot of transparency. So bringing the warehouse network together and the software has kind of been key for us. And then obviously a huge emphasis on client support, rolling our sleeves up and getting into the weeds with our clients. So I think that's an important part in terms of how we handle Q4 and happy to talk through some of that today.
Amazing. And congrats on the Texas 3PL. It's a big state, so it probably makes for a lot of good middle of the country shipments. We just unlocked a new East Coast 3PL on our side, and even just like the savings of having multiple 3PLs, it's obviously more complicated as a brand, but it feels really good once it's actually like stood up. So your brands will be giving their customers product in no time. Um,
Absolutely.
what would just like an off the cuff question, but in working with your brands that are unlocking like another warehouse in your system or in your network, do you have a cutoff for when you allow for another warehouse sort of like network to launch for a brand like before cyber? Like when's the latest you let someone turn a warehouse on, or does it not work like that?
Yeah, no, it definitely like we don't have a hard and fast date,
Yeah,
but you really want to be in those conversations, at this point in the summer and trying to get this going by fall.
yeah,
Even if we're currently supporting a client, even if it's been years in one facility, it's really important, not just for us to have time to absorb that volume in the new facility, and make sure everybody's trained on it and just get it into the flow of everyday shipments. But for the brand too, right? Like going from one to multiple facilities, it changes a lot for the brand. The
mhm,
first most obvious thing is inventory, and that's really
yeah,
important. So a lot of brands look at the cost savings at multiple warehouses, and it all sounds great. But splitting your inventory and making sure you're fully stocked, able to replenish in multiple warehouses, that's critical because as we get into some of the Q4 planning, stocking out even one key SKU in one of the warehouses can immediately take that warehouse almost on offline for you.
yeah.
And now all that volume moves back to that first warehouse, and that can put a lot of pressure on the 3PL, especially if it's in Q4. So you really want to get ahead of it, making sure you're able to cover that inventory position and giving enough time to work with your 3PL to digest that volume and kind of be in that day-to-day routine way ahead of getting into Q4.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think too, the part of switching on a new 3PL is like you do all the stress testing on the D2C, but we did this recently and even like remembering, okay, does this change any of our mapping for FBA or FBM for what we're going to do for Amazon? And then is there any like tracking issues that can like there's just so much to it. And doing that during high volumes just really freaks me out. So I'm excited for that advice. And I think that makes sense. Like the sooner the better. But it's good then the new warehouse is going to be in January. So no one has any excuse.
We're not bringing anything online in Q4. So
Yeah,
Q1's our timeline, and we'll have plenty of time to work with our clients and get everything in there safely at the beginning of 2027.
that sounds good. Okay. So for everybody, what were your like 5 words or less, or what is like something that sticks out to you from last BFCM or from years prior? Brandon, is there like a horror story on your side? I definitely have mine. Just for us all to watch for.
I mean, there's a lot of horror stories. Some I had some where I lost significant amounts of weight. This was probably more a decade ago, or even
Okay.
my barber was telling me that I looked sickly when I came back to town
Um,
after spending a lot of time in Chicago. So we've been through some ups and downs for sure. But we've learned a lot as we've gone. One thing that came up last year, and some of my clients that are potentially on here will remember this is you can do all the planning you want. You could be ready to bring 1,000 people into a building in the winter, especially in places like Chicago. If
mhm.
2 feet of snow are coming the next day, like there's really no
Nothing you
way to fully avoid that, right? So the snowstorms always happen to hit the day after Thanksgiving, it feels like. And that's a really tricky one. And so we've definitely, gotten a lot of stress from that situation. But just generally speaking, and this is more high level, we can dig into it. It's not just your 3PL that's under heavy stress during that time. It's the entire logistics network that you operate in. And I think that's something people forget. We can ship out orders within 2 hours or 3 hours, and that's great. But the carriers are also getting overloaded. And we've seen situations where, USPS just calls us and says, all pickups are off for USPS for the next 3 days. Like,
Yeah, and what are
we're
you
like,
supposed to
but we
do with that?
have
Yeah.
200 pallets waiting for you with thousands of shipments. And they're basically like, we just can't pick up. We're overloaded. So it's not just our own, war stories. It's all the vendors around us and the whole network. So everyone's got to be prepared for it. There's always going to be a bit of chaos, but hopefully on
Mhm.
this call we can cover, some of the things that are in your control that can help you get ahead of a lot of this, knowing the margin for error really shrinks, and therefore you really need to execute well and really be on the same page with your 3PL.
Yeah, and on the carrier side, is there any advice or of course like you get what you pay for, which is part of the game of it all and but is there any advice you have to brands on just what either like what to know about different carriers or carriers that have changed over the years or any just on the subject.
Yeah, for sure. And every year is different. Like we've seen some carriers perform really well some years and then less in others.
Mhm.
I think it's important, throughout the year to really understand your carrier mix well. Who the carriers are, where they execute well, where they have pain points. So when you come into Q4, you kind of know what you're dealing with. So I'd recommend against a massive carrier switch, right before Q4.
Mhm.
And I'd stick with what you know well. Some people used to say don't do carriers with handoffs, because that can get tricky, and that is true.
Mhm.
At the same time, sometimes the carriers with handoffs are good because they make sure they can pick up and sort, and let's say hand it to USPS later in the delivery cycle versus kind of being all with USPS, let's say, where if they're not picking up from clients for a few days, it's very hard to escalate with them specifically. We've
Right.
seen pallets go missing for days with USPS where there's no tracking update. And then on the fifth day, all of the tracking updates happen and they're all about to deliver on the last mile. So you need to know the carriers you're working with, know the trade offs between speed compared to cost, and then spend time with your 3PL. Like we know the carriers really well. We can go through those trade offs with you. But also just overall, like, understand that all carriers will be congested, will slow down, and it'll be not the most ideal tracking delivery experience. But you need to know that going into it, and make sure to communicate some of that to your clients, during these sales where people understand that the whole industry is, kind of buried with orders. And if it takes an extra day or two or three, better to say that from the beginning than just hope for the best. So I think there's a lot to be done up front, but you really need to know who you're working with.
I think that's really good advice. And I have pain from last cyber. Like we were, and I think there's a lot of us, Candace is saying this in the chat too, but where like it just goes so well and maybe you weren't prepared for how well it was going to go. And the forecast here is super important, but that being super successful and then like a big winter storm hit the Midwest and we were told from all of our partners that like it's in the Midwest, some orders in Minnesota and like certain states were affected.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell us like exactly which ones. So then I also lead our customer experience team and so I'm like I can't send an email out to all of my Midwestern shipments
Yeah.
not know who's affected. So I guess we say nothing and then it just, we see what lands. And a lot of it like didn't land actually that delayed, but it's just like you don't want to be the brand that's already a little bit late to ship out and then have a storm. And that's where I feel like it's really hard to get the forecast right. Um, and I don't think anyone like you either do as well as you thought, which is I guess, like good, or you do better than you thought, which is great, but also can be really stressful, or you do worse, which is probably the worst of the three. How early do you ask your brands to get you either like yearly forecasts or cyber forecasts or to tell you like what's gonna hit? And I think probably you have like a big business, so there's a lot of brands at a lot of different sizes, but specific to your biggest brands, do you know their volumes? 6 months in advance, a month in advance, or how does it work on your side ideally? And what should we all know?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I'd say, it's forecasting. Like one thing I've learned, it's really a process. So it's not, email 200 clients and say, okay, how many orders on Black
Yeah, right.
Friday, and just throw it into a spreadsheet. And, like we've done that and we've tried that. And what we've found is there's actually a lot more around forecasting than just saying how many orders do you think you'll do. um, Understanding more depth in the forecast. So what discounts are you going to be offering, like what sales promotion are you going to be doing? Are you going to have specific SKUs that are on sale and others that aren't? Are you going to be doing a bulk discount, like if you get 5 items or more it's 40% off?
Mhm.
um, And in doing that, it allows us to, first of all, test our clients a little bit, because a client that doesn't understand 3PLs well might say, our marketing team is going to go nuts. Like, be prepared for 100,000 orders a day. It's like, you might as well say that there's no cost to you to just have a huge
Right.
forecast.
Everyone ready to
When
go.
exactly. But, being through this a bunch of times, we will challenge that and we'll say, well, look, this is where your orders are. You did a spring sale. This is where it went to, or you did a fall sale. So explain to us more why you're going to go that way. And also, like, where is the sale going to happen? What SKUs are going to sell more? And in doing so, there's a lot that can be done in the warehouse in anticipation of a sale. So if there's certain SKUs that are going to sell more than others, like, we can place that in a more strategic location where they're easier to pick. We
Mhm.
can double up pick aisles sometimes for our clients that are, really going to do a massive spike. Where now, instead of one picking aisle, we kind of double it up. We have two picking aisles, and that creates more capacity. Another thing we can do is pre-bundling and pre-kitting. So if you're going to be doing this massive bundle and that's what you're going to be pushing on Black Friday, in October, we can start bundling that, getting it all ready, turning it into a SKU. So there's a ton we can do with our clients as we get into it. It's not trying to, just warn them, don't go over, because then we're going to waste resources. It's really, can we get some of that work done up front?
Mhm.
Can we be fully aligned when the sales hit? And I think when that's really effective, like, just back to your earlier point, all brands want to have a great Q4, and it's a great opportunity to get some extra sales, especially at the end of the year, especially if there's inventory that you want to move off of quicker than others. And so it can be really successful. But this idea of, we're just going to throw everything at it and sell as much inventory as humanly possible and let our 3PL kind of deal with that, I would say that's the wrong approach.
Yeah.
I think it's better to think, how do we get a spike? How do we get increased orders, but make sure it's controlled, make sure it's aligned with our 3PL's capacity, and make sure that clients are going to have a great experience. They're getting a huge discount on the goods. They might be willing to wait an extra day or two or three if that's communicated well, but you want their experience to match up with those expectations. And if you go too far and people have negative experiences, that extra revenue and profit, it's really not worth it in the long term. So I think it's important as a team to decide what is a successful busy season. Where do you want to hit the mark, and how much emphasis is great delivery experience, to your brand and to the long-term value of the company. That's really the way to think about it.
Well, and I think too, the repeat rate that the brand will then like, you can sell anything once, but like the 6 month cohort from cyber is like what we're all studying right now. And I think you can see a lot of
Mm.
those mistakes if, you got back ordered and you let it oversell, or you didn't have your 3PL forecasted to the right level, or whatever it might be. You can like deal with it. You can refund the orders where people like freak out at you. That's one way. But I do think there's something to also managing the demand on our side as the brand. Like I, this past cyber, like called off Saturday emails, which I hate to do
Mm.
because I'm very growthy. But like if
Right.
we are overdoing it, and I also then I know I'm still going to work here in January and I still need to have some product to sell. And you also have to remember that like anything you sell under, its full cost potential is not necessarily the best way to get that sale too. So I think it's just managing internally for when things go really well, and then also being prepared with your partners to like be realistic on if you need to pull back. Because you can't just like say go nuts and nothing bad will happen. Because if nothing bad was going to happen, then you would have actually like put that into your forecast. And if you actually believed it, you would have promised it. And I think there's no glory in sandbagging it, but also you should like try to manage to your forecast wherever you can. It's a tough game though, because I don't know, like if I didn't have our customer service team and if I didn't have our retention team, I'd probably act a little differently, but I do. And so it's like my team has to work 24/7 to hit back emails for, you know, agents that we didn't have enough of because we just sandbagged. Like it is all connected. So to your point, like it's good that your team is validating the math. Um, And especially now with AI, like hopefully that side of it gets easier for everybody and we can all maybe get more accurate. Who knows though? We never know. Um, in terms of like stress testing your 3PL or getting ready, what are some things that you recommend as someone on the 3PL side or questions to ask about volumes or Sunday shipments or whatever would be helpful for everyone to know?
Yeah, so again, I think this is part of how you build a relationship with your 3PL throughout the year, right? So there's such great opportunities to come and visit your 3PL. And like, I know people sometimes working in brands like, okay, jumping into a warehouse isn't what you signed up for. And I get that.
Mhm.
I used to be in law and I never thought I'd be in a warehouse. And now I live in warehouses. So you never know how things change. But I would really take time throughout the year to spend time with your 3PL, understanding a little more of how it works in the warehouse. How do you process orders? And again, if there are seasonal sales or spikes throughout the year, using that as a test case on how you communicate forecasts, how you work with your 3PL, and then did the 3PL execute on those forecasts that you provided and those discussions you had. I think that starts to get you into the flow of how Q4 should work, and that's really important. Obviously, understanding your 3PL's capacity overall is important. Like if you're the biggest client in
I
your
hate that. Yes.
3PL,
Yes.
then you need to spend more time. It's not necessarily like every 3PL has a biggest client, so it's
Mhm.
not a bad place to be. You'll get a lot of love and
Attention.
attention. But you're also the brand that can stretch them beyond their max capacity, whereas no other client can do that to them. And so understanding your position is really, really important. And they'll move mountains for you. Like they'll do anything they can. But if you're not providing that information or you give them some, Excel spreadsheet in October, you're not doing as much as you can do to make sure it's a successful busy season. Now you could say, well, that's my 3PL's job. It's not my job to like get them ready. Sure, but like you're the one who's going to pay the price. Maybe they'll pay the price if you go after them, but your customers are going to suffer. So you need to be aware of your position, your 3PL strengths and weaknesses, and really spend time throughout the year understanding how does it work when you spike? Where's the capacity? What can we do on our side to make sure you guys are keeping up with it and that there's no, obstacles that come up out of nowhere. And so, there's a lot that can be done in that relationship and that planning. And the earlier you do it, the better. And the more open that dialogue is, the more collaborative it is, the better chance you're going to have of a successful Q4.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. I've worked on brands of all sizes that have done this in-house, done this with 3PLs, and I worked at a brand that it was actually like after cyber, but it was our January like New Year sale, and it was a juice brand, and it went really, really well. And we had our own farms and our own 3PL and all whatever. The entire corporate went to Northern California and packed orders. Like that's how bad it was. And I was not at all on the customer service team at that time. The only reason I didn't go pack orders was because I was like hitting customer service tickets because I used to do that. And I feel like it's really great to be at a stage where you like have control of your supply chain. But then the like sort of trade-off to that is you could grow past your own sort of capacity, like without any plan for what to do next. So I feel like it's great to hear that you're a big client or you have your own logistics, whatever. But like, like I'm sure your brands are super happy you guys are unlocking Texas and that you guys keep growing with them. And you're right, like there does have to be a biggest brand for every business. But yeah, the stress test of it all and like making sure that what if this happened or could you unlock these people or could we train up the staff? And like I think this isn't necessarily the time to optimize for cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple other things, on the stress testing, just to take it one step further, like some things to really understand from your 3PL. So one would just be on SLAs, first of all.
Yeah.
So a lot of 3PLs, including us, will typically have a relaxed SLA, like literally just for the 2, 3 weeks after Black Friday. It's really important to understand it. Like, what does it mean? What if I have an overnight order? What if I have a priority order? And also work with your CS team. Like if you're going from a 1 day SLA to a 2 day or 3 day, have those expectations, communicate those to clients. Don't just panic that orders aren't all out the next day. As you're used to throughout the year. And so that's important to understand your SLAs and then really understand exception handling. So even if, okay, it's going to take an extra day for the 5 days after Black Friday to get out. What if I need to prioritize an order? What if I want my TikTok orders to go before my Amazon orders or
Right.
my 2 day orders to go out before anything else? You have to really understand the level of reporting that you can see with your 3PL in your portal. What are the self-service tools you have in your portal? Which some brands they never even look at this or ask us about it because they never have to do it. Like the orders all go out every day the whole year, but a 3PL like us that's built our own technology and really like built tools as they've been needed for clients. We have a ton of functions around prioritizing orders over the other. There's also ways to work with us where if it's a huge swath of orders that need to take priority over other ones because it's a marketplace, we can do that on our side and put those at the top of the queue. So the time to be understanding that is in August, September, early October. Do a software demo. What are the tools at my disposal? What reports can I run daily to understand what has shipped and what hasn't? How can I see how my SLA stats are tracking on any given day? These are great questions to go over in the early fall, not great questions to ask on Black Friday when account managers are, under duress,
Yeah.
responding to a lot. And like you said, maybe in the warehouse packing up orders, which they
Yeah.
do because they jump in, even if we're not behind, it's just the mentality of everybody's ready to jump in. I'm not great at boxing orders. I'm very good with bubble mailers. That's my comfort zone. Once you get into boxes and tape, I was never as good as other people, but these are really good things to get in front of and understand all the functions at your disposal.
I think that's really good advice. And I think stress testing internally too, how things are communicated is great before cyber. Like I've worked at a business where they didn't pay attention to aging orders or like it wasn't sent upstream. And the way I found out we had aging orders is my order was aging. And I truly,
Right.
it's been 9 days. I haven't heard a thing. And then cut to we found my order, it like exposed a big gap and like a big aging bucket from certain products that were back ordered that were like tripped up in the system. That's fine. But then what was aging actually was sold out in limited edition. And so like for every customer that had just been waiting and hadn't been communicated to, we couldn't actually fill the order. So that's
Mhm.
really disappointing. And these orders were big, so you had to cancel the whole order or reach out. And it's like, what is the plan and what is the rule that you have for each team to get this information like to the right people that can either like decide to send one fewer email and to like back off or who can call the 3PL and ask for a favor or whatever it might be. But I don't like to find out about crises because I'm my own customer. I like to like find out because my team tells me. And I think that that is something we could all test now, like on the next launch before cyber. What's the aging order or when's the last order that went out? How long did the furthest order take to get there? And does anything need to be upgraded? Whatever it might be. I think too, it gets really dicey if, let's say, you do have a really good cyber and then you are a little late in shipping out because things are backed up and things are like maybe within the SLA, but maybe there's a storm and then cut to like it's not there for Christmas. And I think that
Mhm.
like Danny in the chat says something interesting about how the sale went great, then they had to upgrade shipping because that's what was needed, and then they still made money, but obviously less money. And I think that that like decision to upgrade shipping is so painful. But I'm sure
Mhm.
Danny, your repeat rate is like very grateful that you did do that. And I'm always to me like if it's a November Cyber Monday and you are at all at risk of not getting it there for Christmas, like that is insane. And so like something really failed, but I feel like that comes up every year. And I think that you should just always assume that if an order is going to go out past the SLA, then you already have internal approvals on expedited shipping or whatever it might be. So I guess Any thoughts on the expedited shipping of it all or when to trigger it?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And you're reminding me now, again, you're opening all these wounds,
I know,
but it's
same.
I'm remembering now like just also just the journey of the energy starting from,
Yeah.
the excitement of early, Black Friday, and that might start a week or two before where orders are coming in and you're hitting new records and it's really exciting and there's a lot of action with the customers. And then you get through Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which like even in the best case scenario just does take its toll on everybody. It's just a lot of activity, and a lot to manage. And then you hit like a little bit of a lull in early December where it's like, okay, we're through this kind of crazy spike, order volume still high, and now you got to worry about Christmas cutoffs and holiday cutoffs and thinking through that, right? And so quickly the energy changes from getting through Black Friday to what is the right cutoff date? How aggressive do we want to do marketing for holiday gifts? Obviously, every business is different. So some, aren't really like a holiday type of item, but for the ones that are, how aggressive do you want to be? And if DHL says their cutoff is December 19th and USPS is December 20th, and other ones are December 21st, how much risk do you have appetite for, right? Like, are you willing to ship to that last day? Like, we always tell clients at a minimum to ship one day before the announced cutoffs, because we just don't trust those cutoffs well enough. But even a day before, you know how the parcel system works, especially at
Yeah.
that time, like things could get delayed beyond that. And you could have people saying, I bought this for Christmas and it's not going to come in time. So I think expedited shipping is a great call and another one where this is a great conversation to have in September and October, tougher to have in December, but let's have it because you need to think through it. You need to be offering expedited options if you're trying to be aggressive on your Christmas cutoffs. You need to offer different speeds, and you really want to communicate the expected delivery dates on each service at checkout so that somebody
Yeah.
wants to use DHL Ground on December 19th. This is a 3 to 6 day service or 3 to 7 day service, and it's free, the shipping's free, but we are not guaranteeing here that it's going to be there. And we're not giving a full refund because you've had this option. If you choose 2 day, it'll get there in 2 days. You'll pay $10, but you'll make sure to get it.
Yeah.
As a 3PL, like we work with brands on all of those options so that they can understand it, the price differences. And I think choice is really critical to the customer. It also gives you a little bit of a safety net because if they haven't chosen the more expedited one,
Then there's
they've
no problem.
decided to take that risk, but at least you've given them that opportunity. And so understanding your Black Friday strategy and those sales is one thing. Understanding then how you're going to move towards the holiday cutoff, how your messaging is going to change with the clients, how your expedited options are suddenly going to be like even more or more featured or maybe discounted or subsidized. You want to
Mhm.
have all of that planned out way in advance. Your 3PL can definitely help you, but you also need a ton of alignment between your marketing and your ops. Okay, I'm looking at the picture now. This like reminds me of something my kids would do.
Right.
And so, making sure they talk to each other and everyone's on the same page, not marketing wants to do this, but we think it's a bad idea. It's like, you're the same company. It's got to be together and
Yeah.
you need to have that alignment.
Well, and it's like you need finance to model this out before you're
Mm.
in that situation because last thing you want to do is lose your shirt on orders that you could have just like slowed your roll on. So I don't want to make that call and have finance get asked that on like November 20th. That really stresses me out. Like that's the math that everyone can be doing now and checking now and being really careful on. Um, who has questions for Brandon? And remember, like, there's no bad question because every single person who wrote in the chat, like every single thing you said that has affected you, I've also been through, and it's horrible. And I feel like no matter what, we all try so hard to like get ahead of it and to find the best way. But I think that the best system is obviously to just like plan ahead. And that's why we're doing this again in July. So let me find the questions. I am figuring this out. When should a small business consider working with a 3PL?
That's a really great question. I think that for a small business, I think doing some things on your own to get started is always just great. Like I think for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it's important to know what's involved with shipping an order. It's important to know how to tape a box, shipping labels, using that type of software. Even if you're going to move to a 3PL at some point, you doing it first and knowing what the effort is like, for better or for worse, is really important experience to get. Like I always say about e-commerce, your product is only as good as the method of delivery and the client experience. It's not like buying something in a mall. It really is integrated between the product itself, which is obviously the most important, but that experience of pick and pack and then the delivery to the client is so important. So you understanding that end to end right off the bat is so key.
Mhm.
After that, like I think something that small brands struggle with is they do it themselves, and you can really like give a lot of TLC to every package. You can do
Yeah.
handwritten notes, and you could spend 10 minutes making a nice bow on top, and that's great. And your early customers, you need to give them that experience. Going to a 3PL, it doesn't mean you have to trade off all of that, but you are going to have to make some trade-offs, and you need to be aware of that. And you need to be aware that most brands that scale do at some point need to lean on some kind of warehouse partner, because otherwise you're getting into the warehouse business. And like having been in it for 12 years, like it's a tough business managing warehouse workers, buildings, electricity, software in the warehouse. There's so many challenges you're going to face as you scale. So I'd say do it yourself, get your first orders off the ground. Once you feel like you have an understanding of the pack out process you like, the cadence of orders, and exactly how you want that order packaged and ready to go, I'd go work with, typically like a smaller and maybe local 3PL as your first experience, one where you can show up to the warehouse, you can call them, and you can really feel like you're still in control. And from there, you'll really learn about the 3PL experience, what to let go, what to hold on to tight. And you'll get a good sense too of starting to outgrow, that first 3PL. I mean, you might not outgrow them, or they might be big enough to take you the whole way. But a lot of times you do start feeling some of these pain points. Sometimes it's in Q4. Sometimes it's when you bring on a head of growth and they're ready to do some big things, and the 3PL just can't meet those capabilities. And that's when it's a good time to look. So don't look when it's too late. Like I would say, like look one, be with the 3PL that can hit your next stage of growth, not your current stage of growth. You really want that capacity built in. You don't want to be switching 3PLs every 3 years, but it is a bit of a journey for the brand in terms of letting go, trusting the 3PL, and making sure you're with a 3PL that can meet that next level or even the next 2 or 3 levels of growth and the specific capabilities you need from them. That's typically how I would think about, the 3PL sort of life cycle.
I like that a lot. There's a question here that I think is super relevant. Anything specific to 2026 that you're looking at that could be a risk? Fuel prices, tariffs. I mean, these are like painful words that I feel like are already coming true. Anything, Brandon, on your side that you've communicated to your brands?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great points. We're monitoring our carriers really closely at this time of year, because if there's struggles going on now, then Q4 will only be worse. We also spend time touring facilities of our carrier partners. They're always bringing on new facilities that's they say will help with Q4, but we like to see it in action. Is it actually active? And so, making sure you're with the right carriers is important, that they have capacity. The tariffs, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and oil prices for sure are a challenge, and we've seen those, like everybody else, really fluctuate a lot. So I would definitely have a deep understanding of how do fuel changes impact your carrier rates from your 3PL. Sometimes you have fixed rates where fuel's built in, and those aren't going to move at all till the next year, the next renewal. You don't have to worry about it. Others, especially like a FedEx, they're going to have really like rolling fuel updates every week. And so, like, if I'm a brand, unless it's crazy, I would probably never pay attention to that. Is it 20%, 21%, whatever the fuel rate is? But if I'm thinking about Q4 and I'm worried about much more serious fluctuations, work with your 3PL, get a breakdown of fuel, how fuel rates impacted my rates over the last 6 months. Like, where has it gone up? Where has it gone down? And if they went up 5%, how would that impact me? That's a really important thing to understand because it seems like there's going to be a lot of fluctuation between now and the end of the year. And on the tariff side, I would only just say, we haven't spent a ton of time. Just I have like one thing I want to say on inventory, which is getting the inventory in place to your 3PL ahead of time is super important. Like your growth team can do the best marketing, best discounts, and hit all their numbers. If you don't have the inventory to support those orders during that time, you are really compounding delays on top of each other, and it's going to be a bad outcome. So, this is the time, find the cash flow, get the business loan that you need, stock up on that inventory. Do not stock out during Q4 because your customers are going to be waiting longer, but not
Yeah.
just that the 3PL and we try to be the most friendly 3PL, the most flexible 3PL possible. That is in our culture, it's in our DNA. There is only so much we can do for a client if it's Cyber Monday and you've stocked out and you're growing 5,000, 10,000, 30,000 back orders and you want the world to stop for when this inventory comes in and just get these orders out because customers are freaking out. And it's the absolute hardest time of the year for us to do that huge favor or us to prioritize one client over others. So get all of your inventory in. That removes a lot of fear of like new tariffs or there's been a lot of stuff around import delays on at the ports. So get the inventory in there, in place, in the right warehouses. Work closely with your 3PL on your forecast. Try to take some shortcuts if you can on getting in front of those products that are going to go on sale or those kits and bundles and understand the capabilities and the functionality of your 3PL and the communication channels. I think if you do all those things, you're going to be ahead of 95% of brands in terms of being prepared for Q4.
I love that. And there's so many good questions. I'm going to try to hit a few of them super quickly. So someone asked, what if it's your first time forecasting? Are there things you look for in the summer to gauge volume in Q4? I would look at your growth rate. If you have year over year, amazing. I would assume it'll be at least that same percentage over cyber. If you don't, I would look at it month over month. And I would add 20%. And just also, you can judge this by your efficiency and spend. And if you see that you're returning 2x, 3x, whatever, and then you know what you're planning and spending into Q4, you should assume that your spend will be less efficient, will be more competitive, CPMs will be higher, but that's another way to get there. There's also an interesting question or stats you're watching during peak that tells you something's going sideways. For me, that's always session growth. If session growth is outpacing days prior, weeks prior, and conversion rates going down, I know like something massive is going to hit us soon. And I like start to really pay attention to session growth. And then you can also slice that new customer session growth, and that can help you to understand if things are going sideways in a good way. If sessions are dying or like not where they were year over year last year, I would start to freak out. And I would also warn my 3PL one way or the other. And then there's one more question that I have to take because I just love this. It's how early should we start our sales as a small business? The worry is that our main competitors are huge businesses with big budgets and they start their BFCM offerings early November. I think you should launch something new in the middle of November on sale. And I think that's a really good way to like hit them back and hit with newness, hit with like your special product. And then that same thing can be on sale still during cyber and you can like add a sweetener to that deal. But I think the best way to compete against like a business that can outspend you is just to like bring something new to market that people want. And if you do it on sale, then you compete and you don't have to give the same offer out. And
I mean, not to mention, those orders will go out a lot easier. So like if you can get some of those spikes
yeah,
before US Thanksgiving, you'll make our lives a lot easier, but not just that, like you're
yeah.
really the first one, get your orders to the customers, then let everyone else fight over, Black Friday, Cyber Monday space. So I think it's a smart strategy, but you guys are the brand experts, not me.
Yeah. And then my final takeaway is to be nice to your 3PL right now. So that way, when you do call your account manager, they like let you call their cell phone because they like you. And I think that's really key is the better client you can be now, the nicer you can be if you can give them product, make them a fan of the brand. It goes a really long way. And I feel like I never have any problems because I'm always like the sweetest little sweetie. And if you're sweet all year long, then people will do nice things for you. So that's the advice. It's just, I can't imagine anyone that's more powerful than a warehouse partner. So like you want them to want to move on for you specifically.
It's such a great point. And like obviously I'm gonna put my hand up here and say, yes, be nice to your 3PL, but I think you're right. People don't understand there's a lot your 3PL can do for you,
Or not.
outside of what they're contracted to do,
Yeah.
So not that, they would not ship out an order, but there's a lot of capabilities. There's a lot that can be done. There's a lot of knowledge and expertise. Like I look at our client success team. They've been in this industry for so many years. They've seen so many different situations. Like instead of pressing them as a vendor, which like you should press them as a vendor and you're paying, money to your 3PL and you got to keep them honest, but try to be collaborative. Try
Yeah.
to understand what they would do in your shoes. Learn from their war stories and their scars because the 3PLs can do a lot. But you got to give them the opportunity to do it. And that's why like take advantage of your QBRs, like take advantage of an invitation to come see the warehouse, meet more people, say hi to people on the warehouse floor who pack your orders. All of this is only helpful. Nothing takes away from your success. And I'd really recommend to take those opportunities, when you can.
Yeah, 100%. And just because you're the nicest doesn't mean you're the least intense. Like you can be intense and
Totally.
still get people to like you. And so then we do have a few guides that Brandon's team put together for us, which I really appreciate. And it's a guide to switching 3PLs before peak season and then a peak readiness checklist. And I think the checklist is incredible. So I'm very grateful to you, Brandon. You're very smart. I think this is like the longest virtual session I've ever done. Like I always say, oh, it could be 45 minutes, but we actually like have so many questions that we couldn't even get to. And I love that everyone is also freaking out about cyber in July. And we appreciate all of your advice. And maybe you have to come back to us because this was really good. So thank you all so much. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Shipping. Go on sale early, get your inventory there, be nice to your 3PL, download the checklist, yada, yada. But thank you all and have a great day. See you soon. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks, everybody.